Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. On the program today, we'll continue our sectoral review, and our focus is on power in 2014, how the sector fared in 2014, and expectations for 2015. I'll be having this conversation with the chairman, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, Dr. Sam Amadi. Dr. Amadi joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, Dr. Amadi, and thank you so much for joining me on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And here in the studio with me is Engineer Adekola Adedeji. He's a public analyst, and he's also a public consultant. Yes, a power engineer. Thank you so much for coming on the program. I apologize for mixing it up. Yes. So, Engineer Adedeji, let me start with you, since you're on home soil.
Okay.
Before I go to Dr. Amadi. The year actually began on a very high note. There was a lot of expectations. That's 2014, because we're coming from 2013 when they just completed the privatization. And so everybody expected that they were going to hit the ground running. But were those expectations actually met?
I would say to some extent, yes. To a large extent, no. Because one expected a lot of improvement in the past situation, when after all the reforms, all the privatization exercises, which were quite successful, but the expectations were not totally met. Though there were improvements here and there. In fact, the mere fact that we're able to successfully move from government-controlled activities in the sector to private ownership, I think that's a big score in a way, because there's nothing like having the private sector involved in running a major sector like power sector. So to me, it was a great leap, in moving forward.
Dr. Amadi, I'm going to come to you on this one now. We know that expectations were high for 2014. Now, before the investors actually took over the companies, one of the issues that they talked about was funding. And we know that there were a lot of things that were done to ensure that access to fund was easy for this companies that had taken over the unbundled PHC. And one of such was the 213 billion naira fund that was signed at the end of last year. Could you talk more about that?
Well, first, let me say that expectations are of three types. First, there was expectation that the process will be transparent and successful. And I think that was met. We had an acclaimed one of the best professional process in the world, and we were able to sell all the assets contrary to even the views of international financial organizations. But there's a second one about power supply, which we are improving gradually. But back to the question of funding, really. This market is built around two major concepts. One is access to credit. Another one is recovery of costs. We expect that in any market like our own, the major issue will be access to financing, both to acquire the assets and also to invest in improvement in reliability and improvement in capacity. And so the whole idea of the CBN funding is not a bailout, it's not a windfall. It's actually a structured plan by NEC and the CBN to provide access to funding which these decision companies will use to pay for some of the services that you paid, and therefore encouraging confidence in the city market. Ultimately, these funds will be paid by the market itself. So it's more like a loan of a sort. The discos take it, they look at that they're getting upfront, they're getting some time, and therefore it's going to help them in investing in improvement right now. Otherwise, that is a pattern all over the world to create access to better funding for utilities so that they're able to make investments on real time, and therefore they're able also not to pass all the costs to the consumers. The good thing about the CBN facility is that it gives us quick cash to help with the cash crunch. It also comes at low cost which means that the consumer ultimately is paying less than they are paid if these funds were sourced from conventional financial institutions. So essentially, this is to facilitate the deepening of capacity, the increase in reliability, and help these utilities to provide the kind of service that Nigerians expect and this government.
Dr. Amadi. Can you hear me, Dr. Amadi?
Yep.
Sorry to cut you. Let's go back to how they performed. You know, as I said, the issue was funding, and then the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission came together to ensure that there was an ease in accessing of these funds. But you see, before then, a lot of people had, talked about the behavior, have accessed, looked at I beg your pardon, in accessing the electricity companies, a lot of people had felt that they were not living up to expectations. They felt that they knew what they were going to get into before they bought these companies, but coming in, they had these challenges. And so when you're saying that this fund was not a bailout of any kind, it raises a lot of eyebrows.
Sorry, I've lost you. Okay.
Dr. Madi.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
So what I said, you said that the funds were not a bailout of a sort.
Sure.
But when these companies came in, they gave Nigerians the impression that they actually came in ready to do business. And so for 2014, they were expecting to see power supply, and nobody was saying anything about it. And they were talking about challenges with accessing funds. And then the CBN and the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission come up with this fund, the 213 billion naira fund. And then you say it's not a bailout. It raises a lot of eyebrows because people feel that these companies were supposed to be ready for business.
Well, my view would be, hello, are you hearing me? Well, my answer would be very simple. In the electricity market, there is always a need for financing. Our financial market is not that deep. Thank God that the CBN governor is trying to create judicial guidelines that to stimulate financing of this sector. We have no illusion that these companies are going to solve all their forms requirements for themselves. The foreign financiers did not come on time to invest in this sector. They are cynical. But now we have put it through. So when I say it's not a good form, it simply means that this is the normal kind of transaction which they are supposed to repay over 10 years. It is to help them begin to do a massive investment that is needed. So I agree with you that these companies they didn't come with ready-made financial bags. And the illusion or assumption that we sold this asset because the private firms have ready money to invest is not true. We sold this asset because the private firms have better structure and incentive to leverage financing because people can invest in them, give them funds because they can easily control the expenditure and recovery and get back their money. So the idea here is simple. We want to create access to financing for them. That's how it is around. This market depends more on credit than even equity. You're going to have some equity, you're going to take financing to invest and expand capacity. So what I'm saying is this. The performance of the utilities are mixed. Many of them have not done well at all, and I've said so in my analysis in the interviews I've had. Some discos are doing well, some are not doing well. In the new year, life is not going to separate the boys from the men. And part of the system is that if you're not doing well, you lose money. So we are going to regulate them in a way that they meet up with their business plan. So I can agree that in terms of performance, we have a mixed result. We have discos that are not meeting, and they always say that they didn't have enough gas, so the guaranteed generation was not there, and therefore the guaranteed revenue was not there. But all in all, I think we've got some good stories. Ibadan has done well. Eko did fairly well. Port Harcourt is trying to do well. Abuja didn't do as well as expected. Ikeja didn't do as expected. But all those who didn't do well will do better because they are not being helped with financing and with stricter regulations. So I would say that the vision of President Jonathan to privatize has been realized because, one, for the first time, we now have foreign investment of $900 million last month for a private IPP in Benin. We never had that before. It was possible because they saw the transparency, the lack of corruption in the sector, because this is, think about it. We've got Penthouse Court, we've got other providers. This is the only one. There's no case in court, no petition in the National Assembly about the transaction. Today, NEC did an audit and showed up that this company need to refund money to government. In the past, it was not possible. We have made orders and they are complying. We're talking about metering, that they should refund 10,000 to anybody who paid for meter during the season. These are some of the advantages of this competition. It has created accountability, transparency. They are more responsive, and we can now access their failure and help them to improve performance.
Dr. Amadi, let me come in here. Let me come back to my guest in Lagos for him to react to a couple of things that you've actually said, and then we'll come back and continue the conversation because, like you said, last year there were a lot of highs, but then there were some lows, including overbilling and the issue of easy access to meters. But we'll come to that. Engineer.